Should you learn Korean through Japanese? This is a topic that I hear all the time on the internet. You probably shouldn't, but let's talk about why. So I've already made a video about Korean and Japanese not really being related to each other, but despite that, despite if they're related to each other or not, they do have a lot of similarities with each other. For example, many grammar forms seem to have one-to-one equivalents with Japanese. In addition, there's a lot of vocabulary that's the same, and that's because Korea and Japan both borrowed a lot of their vocabulary originally from Chinese and particles. Although there aren't one-to-one equivalents in Korean and Japanese for the particles, they do have many more similarities than between English and Korean. Despite that, it might not be the best idea to learn Korean through Japanese. So first I'll give you my opinion. Yes, you can, but I don't recommend it unless you have a really strong grasp of Japanese already. So before I go into that a little more, let's talk about why Korean and Japanese seem to be so similar, despite apparently not being related. To know why Japanese is so similar to Korea, we have to go back in history a little bit. So let's go back first to 삼국시대 in Korean history. This was back a long time ago, 1500 years or so. And at that time, Korea was divided into 3 kingdoms. There was Silla, Baekje, and Goguryeo. There are some others, but these are the main ones. Of these 3 kingdoms, Baekje was communicating and trading and interacting a ton with Japan, trading their culture, trading things that made Korea unique, things that made Japan unique. A lot of things that they have in Korea today and a lot of things Japan has even were exchanged during this time. Imagine that you live with a roommate who's a surfer dude, right? If you live with that roommate for several years or, live close to him for a long time, you're going to start picking up on some of the ways that he's talking or behaving or things that he likes. It's kind of like that. They had a good relationship with each other and they would do lots of cultural exchange. But that's not the only place that Korea got a lot of its similarities with Japanese, or you could even say Japan got some similarities with Korean. If we go to the 1500s, Japan invaded Korea several times, really bad, as well as Mongolia. The languages were changing while Japan was invading them. But let's go back, let's go further. So let's go back before the 삼국시대. In fact, let's go back to Gojoseon. This was the very first kingdom in Korea. And we're not exactly sure when it was started, but at least it was started before 700 BC. Way back before this even happened. So before Korea was Korea, Koreans were going over into the Japanese continent and creating some settlements there. So in Japan, there were some settlements that were started by Koreans who had gone over to Japan before there was even a Korea. So is it Korean is similar to Japanese or Japanese is similar to Korean? We don't really know. So they have many similarities, obviously from so much history together, but their actual languages themselves are not related. So going back to today's question, can you learn Korean through Japanese or vice versa? Yes, but the problem with learning it through a different language is it's hard enough trying to learn Korean through your native language. If you were to instead learn it through Japanese, would you be able to understand complex terminology and complex vocabulary and explanations in Japanese in order to then understand it in Korean? Now, if you're already a Japanese person, you already speak Japanese natively, and you would understand any sort of explanation that someone would give for a Korean concept in Japanese. That's not an issue. But if you're a native English speaker or another language, and you're trying to learn Korean and Japanese at the same time, you're not going to be able to understand completely, or at least not as well, that explanation in the foreign language for another foreign language. Does that kind of make sense? If you were to see a term such as a adverb, verb conjugation, grammar form, these types of vocabulary words you would have to then learn in this language before you can even understand the word in Korean or a concept in Korean. But then some people might say this, oh, I just want to do it for fun. I just want to learn Korean and Japanese at the same time because I want to know both of them. So might as well learn Korean through Japanese or even learn Japanese through Korean, right? This is a different issue than can you learn Korean through Japanese, which I said, yeah, but it's much harder. Learning 2 languages at the same time is an extremely difficult task. Korean alone takes thousands of hours to learn, and as it is, many people, at least the most thing that people complain about to me is saying that they don't have enough time. They don't have enough time to learn Korean. So if people don't have enough time to learn Korean as much as they would like, how would they have enough time to learn Japanese as well? So instead of learning Korean to a good level, you would instead be learning Korean and Japanese both to a very low level. And that might not be what you want. It's not going to work out where you're going to learn two different languages, which both take a lot of practice and input and exposure and practice and pen pals and all the stuff that goes into learning a language multiplied by 2. And the other problem that people run into is motivation. If you're learning 2 languages, you're going to be learning at half speed or even less if you're getting more stressed and you're losing your motivation, and you're just going to want to quit that much faster. So it's making something unnecessarily hard on yourself. If you do want to learn both of these languages, that's great. Many people have, but not at the same time. I've also done this before myself. So before I learned Korean, I studied Japanese for a few years. And as I transitioned from Japanese to Korean, I didn't want to give up Japanese. I still liked Japanese, I just enjoyed Korean much more. So I kept learning Korean and learning Japanese at the same time, and something very quickly started to happen. My Japanese quickly started to go down, so it was getting worse, and my Korean was just stagnating until I finally decided, okay, I need to focus on Korean, I'm not getting anywhere. I threw off Japanese for a while, I went just to Korean, and from then it exploded and I was able to learn much more quickly. So personally, I don't recommend this to anyone. Again, this is just my opinion. If you have different experiences, let me know. And feel free to leave a comment if you have another question for a future video. I'll see you guys later in another episode of Korean FAQ. 그럼 다음에 또 봐.